Let me ask you, what would you do if you got this type of feedback in your performance review? Imagine for a moment, you are a division leader whose team is consistently ranked in the top 3 highest producing teams company-wide. Your division is profitable, turnover on your team is nearly non-existent, and people from other divisions regularly ask to be transferred to your team. And yet, during your annual review, your senior leader tells you you are too nice. And if you want to move up in the company, you need to learn to lead more authoritatively. This is the feedback one of my clients received. And as they left the meeting, they felt like they were told to stop working alongside their team, stop investing so much in their people, and stop being so collaborative. In other words, be hands-off, direct others, and just lead. Now, don't get me wrong, delegation is extremely important. It frees you up and it empowers others. But that is not what was going on here. No, my client was spiraling because the very qualities that made them successful to begin with, they were now being framed as a problem. And they didn't know what to do with this feedback. As a result, they started seriously questioning themselves and doubting whether or not they had what it takes to be in leadership. Here I was working with this amazing leader who had a proven track record, and yet they were doubting their abilities. Now, it would have been really easy to dive headfirst into their doubts or into the feedback from their senior leader. But in the moment, that wasn't going to be helpful. So instead, we flipped the script and looked at the exact opposite. We dove into their strengths. And this was the unlock that completely changed how they saw themselves. Now, in fairness to their senior leader, their feedback is a common approach to growth, right? You find a perceived weakness and then spend time fixing it and improving it. And it's an approach that, if we're being honest, was forced on us at a pretty early age. In grade school, if you got an A in English, but a C in math, where did the focus go? Towards improving the math grade, right? And that same pattern follows us into adulthood. And it's right there in so many of our performance reviews. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about performance reviews that were essentially long lists of things to improve. Everything from communication skills to executive presence, delegation, strategic thinking. But underneath all of this is a dangerous assumption that if you want to succeed, you have to identify and then fix your weaknesses. But here's the problem. This approach leads people to ignore the very things that made them effective to begin with. And this is where the science behind strengths becomes really interesting. But before we talk about the research and dive into how to discover your strengths, for free, mind you, we first need to understand what a strength actually is, because a lot of people get this wrong. So to get it right, let's borrow from the field of positive psychology, who interprets strengths as values in action. You see, a strength is way more than something you're just good at. Strengths are natural ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that reflect and amplify what matters most to you. Things like curiosity and kindness and teamwork. These aren't just abilities, they're expressions of who you are. And when you identify these strengths and then intentionally use them, you start feeling more energized. You become more engaged in what you're doing, and you often wind up performing better and getting even stronger results. Is it luck? No, it is science. And this is where the research comes in. Up until the 1990s, the field of psychology had mostly focused on disorders, dysfunctions, and problems. In other words, it specifically looked at what was wrong with people. But two notable and amazing psychologists, Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson, they both struggled with this approach. And rather than accept the field as it was, they decided to challenge it by leading a global research effort to answer a really simple but important question. What is right with people when they are thriving and operating at their best? And this question led them on a journey where, together with their teams, they examined more than 2,500 years of philosophy, psychology, and cultural traditions to identify the traits that were connected to human flourishing. And the result was the VIA classification of character strengths. This is a list of 24 universal strengths that span throughout history and appear across all cultures, regardless of race, gender, or socioeconomic status. And what is really cool is that every one of us has all 24 strengths. We just have them in different combinations and to varying degrees. But knowing what your particular top 5 strengths are, which are known as your signature strengths, this is where the real power comes in. Because these are the qualities that are most core to who you are. They're the ones that show up most naturally when you're performing at your best. But here's the thing, because they are so central to who we are, it's really easy to overlook them or fail to recognize them. However, when you discover them and when you understand the role they play for you, things open up in a whole new way. And this is exactly what happened with my client. Because when we looked at their strengths profile, everything else suddenly made sense to them. You see, their signature strengths were kindness, teamwork, love of learning, social intelligence, and perspective. And this unique combination of qualities created the container and the culture that empowered their team to thrive. It is the reason their employees felt supported. It's the reason people wanted to work on their team. And it's the reason the culture was so strong. But initially, my client didn't see it that way. Instead, they scanned the ranked list of their strengths and immediately looked for leadership, which is one of the 24, and then realized that it fell in the lower half of their list. And their first thought was that it justified the senior leader's feedback. But here's the thing about the strengths assessment. None of your strengths are weaknesses, not even the last one on the list. They are all strengths, but some just don't come as naturally and might require a bit more effort to elevate. And middle strengths specifically, these are so cool because they often act as supporting strengths, helping to amplify your signature strengths. So in my client's case, leadership as a strength wasn't absent. It was being expressed through their kindness, their teamwork, and their social intelligence. And once that became clear and they could truly see it for what it was, their entire narrative shifted. By the way, if this is resonating, would you go ahead and click that subscribe button real quick before you forget, and hit the notification bell while you're at it. That way, each week, when I share research-backed insights to help you develop your inner leader for outer impact, you will be among the first to know. Now, I realize what I am sharing goes against conventional wisdom, but this is a perspective shift that can truly change everything for you. Because growth usually happens fastest when we understand and then apply our strengths. Not just name them, but actually understand them. Because strengths create energy, and energy fuels engagement. And engagement, well, that brings us to another quick piece of important research I want to share. One of the most widely studied models of well-being is called PERMA. It represents the 5 elements that contribute to a flourishing life, including positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And what the researchers discovered is that character strengths play a role in all 5. In other words, strengths aren't just personality traits, they are actually pathways to well-being. And that is why definitively knowing your strengths can change how you approach both leadership and life. So how can you know for sure what your unique combination of strengths is? Well, thankfully, a psychometrically valid tool exists, and the best part is, it is free. It's called the VIA Character Strength Survey. It only takes about 10 to 12 minutes to complete, and it ranks all 24 strengths based on how naturally they show up in your life, and then gives you a free PDF with your results. What you will receive isn't a diagnosis or a label. It is simply a map. It's a map that helps you understand the combination of strengths that shape how you think, how you act, and how you lead. And for many people, that awareness becomes a huge turning point, because you can clearly see the qualities that showed up when it was that you were operating at your best. And once you can see this, you can then use those strengths more intentionally. By the way, if you like exploring ideas like this, you might really enjoy my weekly newsletter, The Practionable Leader, where every week I share practical, actionable tips and strategies for cultivating your inner leader for outer impact. You'll find the link in the description box below, along with the link to take the VIA Strengths Assessment. Because the truth is, leadership doesn't start with perfecting some external model or improving a perceived weakness. It starts with understanding who you are, because the patterns that shape how you think and the strengths that shape how you act, those are the same forces that shape how you lead. And once you start recognizing them, you change how you show up, both for yourself and for others. Because who you are is how you lead. And the world needs people like us to show up and lead like never before. So until next week, my friend, be the leader your world needs.